Since the recent election of Donald Trump, the left have been reflecting on going forward, how we're in some ways losing the culture war. I'd argue most people, except trans people, most people aren't concerned about woke and DEI. They're more concerned about housing, NHS, healthcare, affording food. But I think there is always lessons to be learned. And I think we need to reflect on the left going forward. And today I want to go over a video from Byline Times that poses that question, why the left is losing. And it is massively complicated and multifaceted, but let's get into the video.
I mean, it could, and I think there's a need for a narrative. I mean, there's a need for compelling storytelling. But, when I've raised this in the past, some people have argued, well, we can't just take the tools that work for the right and do them on the left. And I've always said it's about how the left or the non-right progressive element of politics, how they understand the forces that have shaped the modern political right and find a way to confront them without compromising on their own values.
Right.
I think that is what is required. And I think one of the things that has struck me about, Trump and Putin, it's all very simple. I mean, Trump, I'll come into office, the war will be done very quickly, I'll end it. It's all very simple messaging, simple sound bites. I mean, I'm not making a new point. This is very obvious. That is a big part of Trump's appeal, rather than offering sort of detailed policy initiatives. We'll build the wall. We're going to deport lots of people. We are going to do America first. And it's very easy for people to understand. And one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, actually the reality is we live in an increasingly complex world, but we also live in a political culture in which we are increasingly encouraged to be simplified in the ways in which we even think about what is going on around us. And so I don't think the solution for the non-right element of the political spectrum is just to adopt simple sound bites and, easy narratives. I think it has to be in some grounding of the complexity of the world. And actually, there are many different things going on.
But that hasn't worked so far. I agree, the world is massively complex in incomprehensible ways. The economy, just how, different people, countries, there's geopolitical dynamics, historical, there's so much to consider when you're making policy and for the future, so many unknowns. But we've been doing that. And that's why the right are winning, because they boil it down to very simplistic, populist narratives. We need to do that. We need to embrace. We're learning the wrong lessons from this. You see Jon Stewart talking about don't call Trump a fascist. No, we haven't been hard enough against them. We haven't been as much as we need. We are too civil. We're too nice. I mean, Byline Times are great. They're very nice. We're too nice for our own goods. We need to be like Steve Bannon, the war room. We need to see this as a war. They see it as a war. They are not. I mean, look at what Trump's doing in America. They're not afraid of just pushing the boundaries and just doing what they want. We're too technocratic, too institutionalized. We're like, well, we trust the institutions and we trust that people are good faith. The right are not good faith. They have simplistic, and again, they often don't even care about the truth. They will just give these simplistic messaging. So we're learning the wrong lessons here to say, how can we convince people the world's complex? But the internet has made it so it is simplistic. We've got the whole world of information and knowledge at our fingertips, whereas now people are less informed, less educated, less aware of historical and political truths than ever. We live in times of Dunning-Kruger, where now you can have opinions on climate change, pretty bold opinions, having never read any of the climate literature, studies, periodicals, science. That's the world we live in now. And we've got to accept it. We've got to meet people where they are and go, yeah, we've got a bold vision. And slogans, I'm sorry, we need to embrace that. It goes against our, intellectual instincts to be like, yeah, things are complex and nuanced. No one wants to hear that. They want simple, bold visions for the future.
Conflicting and contradictory issues that need to be teased out often. But how do politicians on the left make those arguments in a way that is compelling? Because as it stands, what is compelling is the simple sound bites, the simple narratives, which are very clear to people.
But complex, nuanced arguments aren't compelling. They're just that. If you have a complex, nuanced argument, you're going to be there for hours building up the theoretical foundations of your axiomatic positions. No, make America great again, stop the boats, take back control. We need to have a simple message that people understand immediately. I'm sorry, on a bumper sticker. That's the world we live in now. Especially for your average person who isn't necessarily engaged in politics, you've got to be simple and be like, right, I know what they stand for. He's going to deport 20 million people. This is the world we live in now.
Who don't predominantly see politics as about politics. It's not central to their lives. And so,
Well, politics isn't about politics, unfortunately. It's about popularity contests. And we're not very good at it because we are seen as fuddy-duddy, humorless. We need to embrace the fact that, okay, to win, you have to be popular. Farage is great at that. So is Trump. Because they are normal. They will actually be spontaneous in the moment. Have a joke, have a laugh. Be human. But the left are too scared about like optics and stuff. And like, oh, well, we need to be careful. Focus groups have said this is popular. No, have a joke, have a laugh. Because that's the thing. Farage is obviously a politician. He's very good at the dog whistles. He's very good at not answering a question and redirecting questions to where he wants to be. But also, he is somewhat of a human compared to, like, I don't know, Keir Starmer. That's what we need to embrace. And we actually do need to embrace the tools of the right. But be more honest. We don't have to lie like them. We don't have to evoke fear like they do. We just have to have a bold vision that gets people excited. And we can do that. We've done it in the past and we can do it again.
If it's a peripheral issue, which is just sort of going on around them and occasionally they're asked to vote, well, then the simple, clear messaging is what they're going to pick up on. So where is the room even for complexity? And I would argue that is one of the ultimate wins of the modern political right is to close the space in which nuance and ambiguity and complexity can even sit.
I don't think it's that conscious. They've not got a plan. That's just the internet. The internet has favored the right because you can just have crazy edginess and just spout lies and propaganda, have a consistent messaging. The right are very good at falling in line. The left aren't. We're constantly fighting each other. Like, so much of the online left is just online drama about this leftist said that, and it's just like so boring. We're not actually going after the right. We're more likely to go after our own before we go for them. And there's no cohesion in the left at all. There's no. Whereas they'll just toe the line. They were like, oh, what's the talking point this week? Vegan scones, right, we'll go with that. And they just follow the line. They're very disciplined and they will just parrot the same stuff. Whereas we're arguing over like nuanced stuff and going, oh yeah, well, what about this? The nuances of that. Whilst they're winning.
And I don't see any way currently in which this is being confronted by people of more progressive and left-leaning politics.
You and I probably abhor the way that Labour are using the migrant debate and sort of echoing. But that aside, some of the key claims of both Brexit and MAGA, drain the swamp, take back control, resonated with people, especially after 2008, because they felt elites had taken over, their wages were flatlining.
I mean, it's always incredible.
And we didn't tap into that. The inherent unfairness of that. The 2008 crash, the taxpayers bailed out the banks, and then Tories imposes austerity, so completely put cutting public spending, infrastructure, and then raises the taxes. So you're paying more taxes, you're getting paid less, and then we're going, okay, what do we get for that money? What do we get? We've got 300,000 deaths. We've got a declining, crumbling infrastructure, and we're paying out the nose for it. We should have tapped into that. Like, why do they get... It is socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. It always is. Government subsidies, handouts to big corporations, whilst the little man gets nothing. And we need to talk about that. How the little man is being screwed over by the big man. Simple messaging. And people know that. People know they are. But they have to be convinced it's immigrants and DEI and wokey cokey. We need to tap into just simple narratives. That's it. That's what they do. That's it. That's the masters of it. Donald Trump is the master of simple storytelling.
We hardly ever mention the financial crisis of 2008 and what a schism it caused.
But capitalism failed.
It was such a moment.
Well, the idea that capitalism was a reward for hard work failed when they bailed out billionaires and we had to pay for them.
Which is inherently seen as unfair.
And showed that capitalism was rescued by the state. I mean, socialism, communism for the rich, right? And so it just proved that capitalism, that free market neoliberalism didn't work. And yet the gains of that redistribution, of distribution upwards, and the sense of elites being in control and competing elites, and let's blame. So I think, Heidi, no, of course, they are better at tapping into these narratives, though they're lying with some of those days. We didn't take back control.
With some of it, with all of it. And they don't care about, like, that's the thing, we're so nice, like, oh, they lie a little bit. No, they lie constantly. And we're too nice for our own goods. We need to call out the lies. Donald Trump, like, the media just let him get away with so much. He's like, oh, he's a complete fraud, 34-time felon, so much on him, but somehow he can just get away with anything. Like, he can just do anything. He famously said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a vote. They have no shame. They have no morals. And that doesn't mean we lie, but we need to be more combative and go, actually, we need to show strength. We need to show leadership. Because when you look at a politician, do you want someone who's a bit like, we just like Labour, we can't promise too much. If we just, don't really promise much, and then, well, they're not really going to deliver either. Promise more and be like, right, we've got a bold vision for the future, for your children. We're going to take the wealth from the top. They've had a free ride for long enough. The tax havens, the offshore accounts, we're going to take back that money, that's yours, and we're going to have a bold vision for the future. We're going to rebuild like we did after World War II. Get people excited. But we don't do that. We're like, well, Labour's kind of like, oh, hard times are coming. Yeah, hard times are coming, but also make people hopeful for the future.
Lost control. We'll take, with trade, with Brexit. They didn't build the wall. They didn't drain the swamp. In fact, the swamp's got swampier. If you look at all those rich people and billionaires and Musk contracts, all that. But I think more profound thing you'll get out, there is no shape of history which the progressives can conjure anymore. So the right, they have recurrently stories of 30s, from the fascist right. Capitalism doesn't work. It's run by Jews. It's unfair. It creates this chaos and cities and this weird culture. Let's all gather together as fascisti, as brothers, and worship, Sandstall. And then you had a countervailing narrative starting with the New Deal and social democracy. No, we can, if the state works in alliance, provides a consumer society with union rights and with capitalism.
Okay, so what we're seeing now in the last 5-10 years-ish is the often historical backlash against progressivism. We saw it after the suffragettes in the early 20th century. We saw it after the civil rights movement. History is kind of like that pendulum of right, people gain rights, there's some historical change, and then there's a backlash towards it. Because often for a lot of people, it's like, well, this is too quick. You kind of, and that's what we're seeing now: progressive movement and then a backlash. And there will be another movement in a few years towards progressivism again. And we need to be ready for that and go, right, this is the vision we have. The backlash towards wokeism and DEI and trans rights. Okay, you've had that backlash. We've seen it throughout history, the last 400 years at least. Now we need to get real at what the vision is for the future. What's the next progressive cause that can bring everyone together? And it needs to be based on class. It needs to be based on the relationship between the workers and the people who have the money, the tech billionaires, the Googles, the YouTubes, the people who have control, unaccountable control often. So, but is that going to happen? Probably not.
It can work. And then that seemed to be triumphant with the collapse of the wall. Communism doesn't work anymore. In a way, we've just had the collapse of capitalism. And it's promised to redistribute at some point to everybody. The consumer society we'll all become a little bit richer. Trickle down will happen. And trickle down has not happened. It's been trickled up. So you've got this growing inequality. And what's the narrative? The narrative of the right is we'll smash those elites, right? We'll take over. Don't trust them. Bankers, globalists. It's all that, they go to war. That's very different from neoliberalism, from Bush. They're always going on about neocons and globalists, all the stuff which Blair and Bush sort of bought into. And what's our answer to that?
Well, I think part of the issue is that politicians on the left and the progressive end of the political spectrum have still been unwilling to look at themselves. Because I think what is true is that the system isn't working.
We're constantly looking at ourselves. We do that too much in a way. The right don't. They don't care about introspection. They don't care about, are we doing the right thing? They're just out there waging a war and doing what it takes. They play dirty. They will just lie with impunity. And I'm not saying we lie, because we don't have to lie. They have to lie. We don't. But we have to be strong and go, right, let's not look inward. Let's look outward of what we can do, what has worked in the past, what's worked with them, and what can we adopt? Okay, strength, simple messaging, a populist narrative, excitement, energy, hope for the future. We're too honest. We're just like, with climate change and economic stagnation, we're pretty pessimistic about it. And rightly so, because that's realistic. But does that get people excited? No. They want a bold vision for the future. Like, actually, the people at the top need to pay for your children's future. And again, vote children. Like, the right are really good at that, pretending they care about children and women. We need to play on people's emotions to an extent. Not in a manipulative way, but in a way you're doing a story where you get people attached to the protagonist and go, yes, we can do it. The workers, the average person has been taken for a ride, because they will. When Trump inevitably fails and they go, we've seen it. We've already seen that people are going, 75,000 government jobs have been cut. People are being infected. Actually, they weren't going to go for your neighbor. They were also going to go for you too. When people realize that, people will go, okay, Trump lied. Shocker. Who knew? Where do we go next? And we need to offer a viable alternative and get people excited.
Regardless of what you think the solution to that is, it's not working. And that requires those politicians to also look in the mirror and turn that inquiry on themselves.
Be more authentic, have doubt, like your essay about Margaret Thatcher saying, I don't know.
I don't know, but also looking at the structures in which...
But we don't live in that world anymore. Politicians... Yeah, I agree in life you should have doubt about your positions and you should reflect. Yes, interpersonal. But people don't want to see that. People don't want to be like, oh, right, we need to meditate on our doubt and, sometimes we don't know. Yeah. But does that show strength? I think it does in a way, but not for your average punter on the street. They don't want to be like, oh, let's be self-reflexive on the messaging of, no. Be confident in your vision. We are right empirically on climate change, so many things, inequality, why people are struggling. It's not because of immigrants, it's because of the billionaire class.
Which they operate.
Yeah.
And so, for example, a recent report in the Times newspaper was quite illuminating in this regard. It was a report about the Labour Party. People might remember that ahead of the general election last July, Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the party, did a lot of work to talk about this ethics sort of commission that a new Labour government would set up in light of things like the PPE scandal, the Baroness Mone issue, all kinds of things that were seen as being corrupting of sort of the way Whitehall was being run under Boris Johnson and other Conservative governments. And it emerged in this Times report recently that at that point, there was a notion that what was being proposed was some of the loopholes around political donations were going to be closed, which would have prevented companies that are sort of registered in the UK, wherever the money comes from for those companies, from donating to parties, unincorporated associations. And it emerged in this report that isn't now going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen, according to this report, is because Lord Wahid Ali, who is one of Labour's biggest donors, apparently intervened. Now, this is an example of where there is no looking in the mirror in terms of...
Yeah, but people don't care about this. People don't care about ethics. They're not going like, oh, yeah, there's so much corruption and backhand deals and just unethical behavior in politics. And obviously we've got to tackle that. But people, first of all, want a vision. And by talking about great ethics, great. All for it. But is that going to get people excited and go, yeah, I want to vote for these? They just see everyone as corrupt anyway. And yes, we've got to fix the system. But you don't run on fixing the system unless you do it in a popular way, like drain the swamp. Yeah, we're going to tackle corruption. We're going to tackle the corruption of the bankers, the people who are taken from us. But we don't do that through like technocratic kind of like policy and go, that is not exciting. It's not sexy. People don't care.
The structural terrain in which the Labour Party is operating in, that loophole, it's doubtful as to whether that is now going to be closed. Elon Musk could donate however many millions to the Reform Party, for example. Now it would be seen as in reaction to Elon Musk. No doubt the Labour government is in part quite fearful of what kind of backlash on Twitter or X.
Yeah, but the right wouldn't wouldn't care about that. We're too caring. Like, why? Like, Keir Starmer's going to be attacked whatever he does. So just do it. Be radical. He has the chance now where actually he's in power. He can be radical and he's going to be criticised. If he does do it, yeah, he's going to be criticised. They don't care on the right. Do you think Trump cares about being criticised for anything he's doing now? Of course not. He's just doing what he wants. We come across as so weak. And we are. We are weak because we're too bloody nice.
That might cause. What I'm trying to say is that is doing business as usual, kowtowing to a donor of your party who's intervened.
True, but you've got to pick your fights. I agree. We should tackle corruption and the kind of dirty money in politics. But that shouldn't be our priority right now.
And so this is part of the issue. This recognition that the system is broken has to involve a really honest reevaluation of what that means before you can even get to the formulating of narratives and a compelling story to tell on the other side of it.
No, we've just got to compete. We've got to build the infrastructure of how we message, first of all. We don't have the money to actually get our message out there. That's the main one. And then we need to have a disciplined message on the left about the stories we tell about the people at the top and defend immigrants and get people excited about a bold vision for their children. That is going to be funded by the Googles, the Jeffrey Bezos, the Peter Thiels, the billionaires who have all the money. People don't care about the fun. It is what it is. It's always going to be corrupt. Yeah, we're corrupt. The system is corrupt. But we have to build a bold vision, and then we can deal with that later. We actually have to get people excited.
I question whether that's happening.
well,
Yeah, it's not going to happen in that way. That framework of, yes, get people excited by ethics committees and, taking money out. People don't care. They want their lives to be better. They want, potholes to be filled in. They want the NHS not to be privatized. They want to be able to afford a house. That's what we need to focus on, because the right are very good at that. They'll pretend to care about freedom of speech. They'll pretend to care about the working man. We need to focus on that. Your wages are low because of billionaires, not because of immigrants. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I am hopeful for the future because we're right. We're the good guys. They don't care about the average working person. Donald Trump isn't going to make America great again. And that's going to be a big benefit to the left and progressive projects across the world. So we need to be ready, bide our time, and be ready for the next few years to swing the pendulum back to progressivism. If you like that idea, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.